Hello, Forrester here, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'll be reviewing the Star Citizen ship, the Aegis Avenger Titan. Star Citizen is currently in alpha testing, and the Avenger is one of the flyable ships. Lovingly known as the Penguin amongst fans, the Avenger is described as a light freight hauler. The Avenger is one of the smallest ships that I reviewed. It doesn't really have multi-crew capability, so it's largely a solo ride. I followed the usual format for this review, splitting into 5 sections, starting with a ship tour and deck flow, assessing combat performance, reviewing handling and visibility, looking at the operating and purchasing costs, and finally summarising. I've included timestamps in the video description to help navigate to each part of the review. If you do enjoy this review, please do subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. That helps you to be notified of future videos and helps me to grow the audience. So, without further ado, Part 1, Ship Tour and Deck Layout. There are 2 entry points into the Avenger. At the front of the ship there is a ladder which leads up into the cockpit, and at the rear there is a cargo ramp which leads up into the cargo bay. Although the cargo bay looks initially quite spacious, there is storage for 8 standard cargo units of storage, as well as small vehicles that would fit into the bay, such as the Grey Cat. At the front of the cargo bay, there's a small step that comes out which steps up into the crew compartment. In the crew compartment, there's a bed which can be used to log out, as well as just some decorative features. Moving up through the crew compartment leads into the cockpit and the pilot's seat. One slightly distracting feature is a flashing red light on the bottom right of the pilot's cone of vision. I don't know what it's there to signify, but my eyes are constantly drawn to it, as if I should be aware of something that's going on. Part 2, Combat Performance. In terms of armament, the Avenger carries a size 3 nose-mounted Gatling gun, supplemented by 2 size 2 Badger laser repeaters on the wings. That makes for a reasonable forward-facing punch, with weapon gimbals giving a little flexibility, albeit still largely forward-facing. These are complemented by 2 size 3 missile mounts, by default armed with 2 Ignite size 2 missiles. It's a fairly nimble ship. It's not a stretch to get the nose pointed on target and start dishing out some damage. The real challenge to combat performance comes by way of the 2 size 1 shield generators, which really don't provide much by way of protection. Therefore, I'd suggest that the Avenger is not a ship for prolonged engagements, so it's a quick fight and either win quickly or escape. Part 3, Handling and Visibility. So, if my verdict of the Avenger in combat was a penguin stuck on thin ice, my verdict for handling and visibility is that it's a penguin gliding through the waves. Handling is excellent, the nose points responsively, there's little to no overshoot, and acceleration is fantastic. On a couple of occasions, whilst I was getting used to it, the deceleration wasn't quite as responsive as I expected. That's not to say it's bad, mostly that it's not quite as good as the acceleration might lead you to believe, meaning once or twice I would overshoot a landing pad by a few meters. Within atmosphere, the good news continues. The Avenger does remind me of the space shuttle a little in some of the materials and colours used, and that design language translates into a streamlined lifting body. What that means is that in atmospheric flight, she'll pull some high G turns without breaking a sweat. Although a little like a space shuttle muse, the Avenger will drift a little through the turn. As for visibility, I was going to describe the cockpit as a bubble canopy, although I realised that might be technically incorrect, but that's how it feels from inside. Visibility is excellent, especially facing forwards, the only intrusion to the view being the instrument panels with MFDs, which naturally curves inwards at the bottom of the pilot's field of view. Tilting your head to the left and right offers fantastic peripheral vision, and although there are no windows beneath your feet unlike some other ships, it's still incredibly easy to see what you're doing when taking off and landing. As you might tell by my enthusiastic description, I think the Avenger has really set the standard for me of what good visibility should be like for a pilot in Star Citizen. Part 4. Operating costs. So, I described the operating costs of the Avenger as dirt cheap. Refueling for both quantum and hydrogen fuel isn't going to break the bank, it'll barely scrape a few alpha credits at best. The 8 SCUs of cargo capacity won't turn a big profit, but equally it limits exposure to risk of server crashes. There's plenty of room inside for box delivery missions, which feel like a more productive use of time on the Avenger, with a cargo bay simply being to augment income whilst running those. Per my comments on combat performance, I'd largely avoid taking claim jumper type missions on the Avenger. Small vehicles such as the Grey Cat will fit in the cargo bay. I'm not sure that's a money making opportunity at the moment other than a nice feature. The quantum drive is a bit of a drawback. The fuel stores are somewhat limited, and that means you'll often have to stop off on some longer trips, and also it's slow. Bring a book. So, part 5, the verdict. I'll start by saying that the Avenger is a nice ship to fly. It's easygoing, non-stressful flying, especially when used in the marketed role as a light freight hauler. The bed means you can log out pretty much anywhere if you're just taking things easy. There's a lot of love for the Space Penguin, but I must say I was a little disappointed by how fragile she is at the moment in combat. The armament means the Avenger has some real teeth, but not much by way of a defensive shell. The other variants might offer some variety here. All of that said, if you're largely avoiding combat situations that you don't want to be in, you often don't have to fight. So to buy in-game is just shy of 800,000 Alpha UEC, or for a pledge package around $70. That's not a bad price point for this ship. Still expensive to get entry into the game, but it's not a bad entry point. Personally, I'm a little disappointed by the lack of any seating for a second person. It would be quite possible just to have a little fold down somewhere to bring a friend along. Not that they couldn't stand, but I'm a big fan of the multiplayer aspect of Star Citizen. Even the Drake Cutlass has 6 fold downs. So where does that leave me thinking? The Avenger is a lovely ship. It's a solid in-game purchase for the price point and a good entry point for somebody just getting into Star Citizen. I'm not sure I'd go so far as to recommend it because I think there are other options out there that are more attractive if you're willing to splash out a little more, but it's a good, solid choice. Once again, thank you to all of those of you who subscribe to my channel. It really motivates me to continue making videos. Please let me know your thoughts on the Avenger in the comment section, and press the like button if you enjoyed watching. For anybody looking for a group who plays the current patch of Star Citizen regularly, I've included a link to my organisation, the United Space Confederation, in the video description. And to close out, thank you for watching. I hope you'll hear from me in the next video.